Hello, Bournemouth fans, and welcome to our latest video. And as you can see, I've got the exceptional, the excellent journalist, Jacob Tanswell. Jacob, promotion party sort of cooled down. It's a little bit calm at the moment. It's going to be very busy very soon. But how are you doing?
I'm doing well, yeah. Last couple of weeks I've just been taking a bit of time off, and it's been an incredible season. It's just a great chance to reflect because it's been just constant this season. Everything. I mean, I've lived and breathed Bournemouth. I don't think I've really had a day off, so just have some time to pause, reflect, and just celebrate what an incredible season it's been.
If anyone deserved it, it was you, Jacob, definitely. Your content's been absolutely amazing. We'll talk a little bit more about that very, very soon. Now, if you're new to Cherries Red Army, you'll see that we've rebranded for the 22-23 season. We hope you like what you see. Subscribe to Cherries Red Army. We've gone past 1,000 subscribers, and hit the like on this video. Now, if you're over the socials, you might have seen that Dorset Live sort of dropped a little tweet saying they were looking for potentially a new journalist, and this caused a bit of panic through fans that I know and friends that I know. Jacob sort of confirmed that his new direction next season might not be with the Cherries. I'm going to move this over to you, Jacob. You sort of have released a Twitter post, and tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so it came out yesterday, well, at the time of recording, that they were looking for a new AFC Bournemouth correspondent, to the cat kind of came out the back then. And then I did see all these tweets asking me, and I'm really sorry that I couldn't reply to them. It was always going to be today, but I did really appreciate the panic. But yeah, it is true. I will be leaving Reach, Dorset Live, and covering AFC Bournemouth. It was, for me, I absolutely love this job. This is the job I've always wanted, to cover a club in depth every day, and I've absolutely lived and breathed it. It's been amazing since I came back. I obviously used to play for the club in the academy. Since I come back, the support, I didn't realize how tight knit and just how amazing the fan base was, and so that support, that was the reason why I just kept pushing and kept, working as hard as I could, was because of the feedback and the incredible comments I got. So I will be leaving, but it's been it has been my most enjoyable year in journalism, and it's been a whirlwind, to be honest with you, Kirk.
I know when you confirmed it to me, I was absolutely gutted. On the other side of the coin, I was absolutely delighted for you, because you've been absolutely amazing. I can remember about a year ago, maybe just under a year ago, you contacted me and said, I'd like to get your thoughts on AFC Bournemouth, especially with the Scott Parker appointment as well. And since then, we've stayed in contact really well. I see you as a really good mate in regards to what we deliver for Bournemouth. And you've always been on hand to offer your knowledge to Cherries Red Army, even though your schedule's been really busy. And yeah, you've been a great friend to the channel.
Thank you. Probably because I haven't got much of a social life anymore, so that's why I'm always on hand. But yeah, I really appreciate you backing in that, everyone that goes into the the comments, Aaron, everyone involved in your channel. I always watch on those long drives away, coming home from away games. I see your vlogs, see your reactions, and it actually helps me prepare and shape in terms of what I want to write about in the coming weeks. So I really appreciate it.
That's amazing to hear. Right, well, we've got you on the channel. It's sort of the final video of the season, shall we say, even though we're going into a new season, but an opportunity to maybe just get your final thoughts on last season and what we're going into. And let's start right at the start, because Bournemouth have sort of released their retained and not retained list, and there were players in that unbeaten 15 that played a massive part. And you're talking about the likes of Gary Cahill, and for me, without his leadership and how good he was in that first 15 games, warped it at times, we wouldn't have got promoted. You can talk about Dom Solanke and Mark Travers, but Gary Cahill, what a player he was in that unbeaten 15.
He looked so comfortable, didn't he? Especially when he first came in. He just gave experience, leadership. And as soon as he came in, you just felt this was a promotion-ready side. Everything about him, his impact off the field, on the field. I remember those games against Cardiff away, for example. I thought the way he handled Kiefer Moore was outstanding. That was, for me, the standout performance from Gary Cahill. And then obviously he had a little bit of, he had a few issues. I think there was a growing feeling that he wasn't up to it anymore in terms of his legs. But he still, even when he wasn't playing, I didn't hear him moan, didn't hear any whispers of him being discontent. He just carried on, and he understood his role, and he supported Nat Phillips and Lloyd Kelly fantastically, and he certainly made a huge impact in his 1 year at the club.
around that Gary Cahill unbeaten 15, you had some partnerships building. Jordan Zamora, Jaden Anthony down the left. And on top of that, you had Billing backing up what he did in that first season in the Championship. And Dom Solanke looking to kick on after scoring 15 in that first Championship season. And again, massive contributions to get us really high in the table early on.
Definitely. I think Phil Billing, for me, he was a fire starter in the first couple of games. Nottingham Forest away. You look back at it now, you think, what a result that was. David Brooks gets sent off, and Billing, just that goal he scored, Cardiff away as well. I thought he was outstanding. And even when he was going through that patch in the winter where I saw a couple of people say, he's not up to it, you've got to take him out the team. I always felt he has the ability to change a game, and he's so rare, in the Championship season, for a guy that can just turn up, be a number 10, be a number 8, do anything that Parker wants him to be, and produce those type of moments. I think he's a really, really special player, and I'm looking forward to watching him from afar next season, because I think he can really, really make a step up. I think he's mature enough to do it. But Jaden Anthony and Jay-Z, considering there's doubts over them starting the West Brom game in the first game of the season, for what they've done now, they're mainstays, and they're probably going to start the Premier League season. So huge credit to them, and huge credit to the coaches that have got them there in the first place.
Thankfully, we got those contract extensions done as well. So interesting to see how they do. And maybe this is the time for Billing this time round in the Premier League. The 2 years he's just had is definitely going to help him. So most teams will say, Jacob, that every team goes through a blip at some point, and we're always going to hit some sort of a wall. I think it started with a home loss against Preston, which we shouldn't be surprised with. But let's call the halfway stage of the season a bit of a mixed bag. I know Scott Parker said at the end of the season that stats don't lie, best defensive record, scored goals. And I get all of that. And he says he doesn't look at social media. I'm not sure I completely believe that. But the naked eye doesn't lie. And I know that I was frustrated at times from what we saw. We mainly struggled against the teams lower in the table because we only lost, I think, to Blackburn in the top 8, whatever it was. But that halfway stage, concerns were building mainly about performances, not necessarily results.
Yeah, he called it a blip, but I think it's how Bournemouth kind of just continued throughout the season in terms of, there was very few performances where you thought, wow, they're blowing a team away. I know they've had the odd occasion at Blackburn and Huddersfield, but at home especially, it just felt tough going. And it felt like teams, they knew they were inferior in technical quality, so they just decided to sit in that low block. And we've all talked about how they can break down a low block. And I think if we do look ahead, Scott Parker's got to find a way of creating more chances for Dominic Solanke, whoever's up front in the Premier League. But it was a blip, and I know there was a few rumblings, and that Peterborough game at 1-1. I remember that was the moment where tensions just completely boiled to the surface. So the way they came back and they handled it was good. But I always felt, I know there's people doubt, but I always felt from the get-go, really, they'd have enough to get promoted, but there were a few hairy moments.
There definitely was. We had the whole City loss at home, and it was mainly at home that we struggled. So we went through that. Scott Parker said, look, just keep believing. We're not going to change our principles. A lot of managers say that. And I know that I said, Jacob, that we got to a point where it'd be like a failure if we didn't get promoted from the stage we were at. And some people were saying to me, failure's a harsh word. It wasn't harsh. With the position you were in, with the squad you had built in 2 transfer windows, playoffs would have been a failure for me. And maybe I think you had a similar opinion. You were very confident we were going to get over the line. But when I now look back and think that when we needed Scott Parker to step up, when we needed the likes of Lloyd Kelly to step up, Phillips as well, those last 3 games were absolutely awesome. And the win against Blackburn, the win against Forest, and then the comfortable day against Millwall. I mean, he pulled it out of the bag, didn't he, Scott Parker?
I think the pressure was on as soon as deadline day hit. You signed 7 players in one window, you have to go up. For me, there was no, it was a prerequisite. You had to get automatic promotion. I thought the Championship, it was still coming out of COVID as well, so it wasn't probably at its full strength. It wasn't quite as good as it's been in other years, but you had a lot of banana skins in there, and especially towards the end of the season. I think for me, the game that I always look at is the Coventry game. I thought Scott Parker was masterful in that game. Its changes, tactical changes, everything about it, I thought was fantastic. And Coventry, a good side. And the way he masterminded that Blackburn away as well. The pressure was on, and I remember Coventry, Lloyd Kelly, that first half, he was terrible. I can say it now, but he was horrendous. And I thought,
we said it.
I remember a point where he did a long diagonal ball and it went out of play, and I looked at the away fans, and they were just really angry. Hands were going up in the air, and I thought Lloyd Kelly might be in a bit of trouble. He might have gone mentally this season. He might need a rest. And the way he bounced back from that was unbelievable. I think he got better defensively. His 1v1 duels, he didn't dive in as much. I think passing out from the back, he was much better. And I think it was helped that Nat Phillips was being a little bit more confident. He could start passing a bit more progressively. And he didn't always have to give it to Lloyd Kelly to start the attacks. But as you say, the key men, including Parker, when the pressure was on, when they had it was now or never, single swim, they swam, and full credit to them.
Yeah, and you spoke about it earlier on about the fan base, and it is a family club, and once you're in the hearts of Bournemouth, you really, really feel it. And when I look at Scott Parker now, I feel like he's on the right track to winning a lot of fans over. I think it was 60-40 at the start of the season. I was at Hull City when we weren't great, and he didn't even come over, didn't even come close, just walked straight down the tunnel. And you just like, come on, we've travelled for hours, just come and clap us. We didn't even lose. Yeah. And something clicked at some point. And then he was like standing by the warm-up, by the Steve Fletch stand at one point in the second half of the season. He was getting closer and closer. Yeah. Then they showed that behind-the-scenes footage that they were hoping to prepare if we beat Forest. And something's changed. Mm. I'm not saying he's in the Eddie Howe mould yet. He's not in the complete hearts, but he's on the right track, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I know there was discussions after the Peterborough Reading game about his connection with the fans. They felt he needed to do more, and I think he heeded that advice. I thought, as you say, before games, you go nearer to the fans. I think after Fulham as well, he showed that emotion with the fist bump and the roar. He was starting to connect and build that rapport with supporters, and I think that was so key, because Bournemouth tight-knit community, they want a manager to galvanise them. You want someone to look at that figurehead. And I think perhaps at times he tried to look like he was too cool, too composed. He always wants to have that air of composure when, there's times where, he doesn't really feel that. And after games, he's kind of let emotions get to him. And I think he was trying too hard to look like, oh, look at me, I'm still composed. This is a long season. And I think at the end, he just started speaking from the heart, and he realised that resonated with supporters. And, the fans, the club, they notice it. The club notice it. People say the club don't notice fans and they don't really talk about the fans. They monitor social media. They know the feeling outside the club. They know everything. And they knew Scott Parker had to start building that rapport. And luckily he did. And full credit to him, because a lot of managers during the season would say, go away, I'll do it my way. Talk to me at the end of the season when we're promoted. But he listened to that advice, and he's always been impressive inside the changing rooms. I saw that Nottingham Forest footage, and it didn't surprise me at all, because everyone from Marbella, a few players I spoke to said, this guy, when he speaks, you listen. And we haven't had that since Eddie from a couple of years ago, really. And it was just so good to see that in the flesh on Twitter, and he got the credit he deserved, because the way he's galvanised that group. It's a big group. It's it was 29 players at one point. Sure. And there's a few players I know in February were annoyed that they weren't playing. They think, why am I at the team? But he got them back on side, and he built them and made them feel a part of it. And I think we saw that towards the end of the season when they're all celebrating together.
Interesting you say that, because that was always going to be the hard task for me, trying to keep 28 players happy, and whether that was going to derail us. So, okay, now this is going to be a bit difficult for you, Jacob, because we don't really know what's going to happen in pre-season. I'm sure we're going to be busy. We need to be a little bit busy in certain positions. Yeah. But how does Bournemouth and Scott Parker survive in the Premier League? What do you think he needs to do? Because you've spoken about him wanting to dominate the ball. Well, we spoke about dominating the ball and using certain moments to go. But we know in the Premier League that moments are few and far between, and Dom Solanke's going to need to take every chance potentially that he gets. Fulham scored 27 goals under Scott Parker and they got relegated. I'm trying to think how many goals we scored minimum. I think it's about 40 in a relegated season. Goals are going to be key. Obviously, Travis is going to need to keep clean sheets. Defence is going to need to do well. But what Scott Parker got to do differently this time round to try and be a success in the Premier League?
I think he realises that he's going to have to see possession a little bit more. I think he's going to have to refrain his press a little bit. He's going to sit deeper. I can see, I think I've written about it. I can see what he did at Fulham towards the back end, where he would use his left winger, which would probably be Jadon Anthony, as a wing back, and he'll go to a back five out of possession, and then he'll look to transition and counter attack, because Bournemouth have been excellent on a counter attack. They've had very few opportunities because loads of teams just had 10 men behind the ball. But you saw against Huddersfield, those 5 shirts. I think that's kind of what Scott Parker's going to aim to do in terms of breaking quickly, using Billing, Zamora to underlap, Solanke to stretch a pitch, Christie to thread those balls through, and really make the most of the space, because there's going to be space left. You see Liverpool, I know they're a fantastic side, but they leave half a pitch at times. And it's going to be so different in the Premier League. So I do think, the way they play will naturally lend itself to the Premier League. But I do think out of possession, they're going to be a little bit more disciplined, perhaps won't press with the same gusto as they do at certain stages of the season. And they'll have to get an excellent centre-back to partner Lloyd Kelly.
I think it will be a very different Bournemouth team in this Premier League than we saw in the 5 years under Eddie Howe. And I know that a lot of fans are wanting to know potentially the direction of the club. It was obvious the first time round that we were always going to spend money on better players to try and keep us in the Premier League. Ultimately, that was probably our downfall in the end. But there are fans that want to spend this money a little bit more wisely. They want to have that legacy, the training ground, maybe not what it was originally planned to be, but will it be adaptive? Will we get something? Anything that from here on in for the plan and the direction of the club?
I think it's going to be similar to the Premier League, to be fair, especially in the first couple of years. I think they're going to spend the money on players. I don't know if they'll even carry on with the Canford bag in the site. They might go for somewhere else. They might sell it on. But right now, I think the immediate future is to get bringing players in to establish themselves as a Premier League club. Of course, with a club like Bournemouth or any team, between 10th and 20th, there's always a chance that you're going to get relegated, sooner rather than later. So, for me personally, I now can speak outside the Bournemouth. I think the training ground needs to be done. But saying that to Scott Parker, saying that to the coaches, saying, sorry, we're not going to give you 30 million this budget. We're going to focus on the training ground, which you might not even be here to see. I think will be a bit more of a difficult task. But yeah, I think there needs to be a legacy created, but I don't think it's going to happen.
And a quick mention on some players, because there's loads of really good free transfers. I don't know if this is because of COVID, but when you look at the Championship, there's a real bucket full of free out of contract players, your Rothwells, your Swifts. You could arguably say, are they going to be able to cut it? Is it not in the same mold as what we've already got? Do we want to have 3 or 4 wingers that are the same ilk? But if you are going to think about not spending millions on a player and just cutting wages, are there options there?
I think so. I think Joe Rothwell is the one they want, and I know he's talking to a lot of clubs at the moment, so I'm not sure when a decision will be made by him and his agent. But there are, like you say, there are players in that bracket, like Tom Lawrence, for example, that can go to Bournemouth. But I do think initially, especially at the start of the season, there will be shopping in that higher market. They'll be trying to get themselves in the hat for better players. Whether they can get them remains to be seen. But I do think perhaps if they do struggle to get those players in, I think they will turn to that low market and perhaps those free agents too. But I'm really, really excited to see and intrigued to see from afar how and who the type of players they recruit, because I think they're going to be ambitious this season. I know Scott Parker wants to be ambitious. You saw at Fulham, he brought 9 players in when they got promoted. And I wouldn't say there's going to be 9 players brought in, but I think it's going to be higher. I would say 5, 6, 7 really. So it's going to be interesting to see how they change the squad as well. And the contract is so much they need to do this season, this summer. So Neil Blake and Richard Hughes will be very busy.
Very busy. Not sure if it's fair to me to say this, Jacob, but going to ask it. But you can shut me down if you want to. Do you reckon Bournemouth will get a deal done for Nat Phillips?
I think it's going to be late. What I heard about 3 weeks ago when I inquired about Nat Phillips stuff, they said it could be done, but I do think it will be done later in the window. You know what Liverpool are like; they like to charge premium fees for their players and encourage a bidding war. So I'm not sure if there's any other suitors at the table so far for Nat Phillips. But I think, in my opinion, if it's over 10 million, I would encourage Bournemouth to look elsewhere. I know everyone loves him at the moment, but I don't know if he's good enough to be more than £10 million. So let's see what the recruitment team comes up with and see the scouting system and see if there's a better option at centre half.
Yeah, I think Cameron Carter-Vickers is out there as well,
Yeah.
potentially looking at obviously a permanent deal at Celtic. But I know we spoke about him, and he knows the AFC Bournemouth with his time previously. And like you said, Jacob, it's like we've never been away. Bournemouth and Liverpool having that transfer connection automatically, 15 million. So yeah, it's good to be back. That's their welcome to us. Right, Jacob, it's been fantastic to catch up with you. I've got some quick fire Q&A questions. Just
Okay.
they put you on the spot. I've not even give you any time to prepare, have I? So, but look, I've got some questions here. Just give us your answers to these throughout the season. So, your favourite AFC Bournemouth moment last season?
Ooh, swiftly quick fire. I'm going to go David Brooks coming to receive his medal. That gave me goosebumps. Lovely, lovely moment.
Fantastic. Hopefully, we can see the David Brooks that we all know back in the Bournemouth shirt next season. Favourite player to cover?
I'm going to go Philip Billing. Something about him. I get drawn to him all the time because he sometimes looks like he doesn't care, but we know he does because he's second in the running charts. But it's always that thing where you think he can do something great, and I always look at him even when he's rubbish. I always think, don't take him off. Don't take him off. He might score. So yeah, Philip Billing. I'm intrigued by, and it's a shame I never got to speak to him. I know he's not a big fan of talking publicly, but yeah, great player.
Scott Barker didn't like taking him off either, but granted, he had his reasons. Favourite player to watch?
Dominic Solanke. I remember Peterborough away. It was a horrendous game. I can't remember anything that happened apart from a little nutmeg he did, and that was the best thing that made the journey, the travel lodge budget, the 1 o'clock getting into the travel lodge all worth it. I thought it was masterful, and Dominic Solanke for me. I always thought he was good, but now I think he's a fully fledged Premier League striker, and I'll say it now. I think he's arguably the best striker in the Championship from this season. I know Fulham fans won't like this, but I always felt Solanke gives you so much more than Mitrovic. But we'll see next season. The proof will be in the pudding there.
Definitely will. Now, I know you've told me before that you cover the whole of the country, lots of driving, lots of hours. So what's been your difficult piece this season with all of those hours and maybe lack of sleep?
The difficult piece, in what way is it?
In the piece you've had to cover that you've maybe it's been difficult, or you've just, I don't know, you've got emotion in it and you've just, I don't know, the hardest piece you've been able to cover this season.
It's in terms of tricky and trying to jump all through these loopholes. Probably anything to do with the transfer situation just is exhausting because you're going to annoy people. You're going to get people that don't want you to say something that will say it's not true, but then they'll say it's true, and then all our vested interest. But anyway, that was difficult, but I enjoyed that. Probably the hardest one was the last one I really did after a game was just the David Brooks Nonny piece. I wanted to do that, but I never quite found the right time to do it. And I just thought after the last game of the season, I wanted to just reflect and take perhaps a different angle. But to do that and just I wanted it to have an emotional connection, but I didn't know Nonny that well, so I didn't want to come across too cliche or whatever. So that's arguably the toughest one, yeah.
And the club were great with Nonny as well, and it's still great to hear his voice before games. Jacob, this is your moment. I mean, I know you've got your stuff out on Twitter, but yeah, I know you've really bought into the fan base. We're going to miss you. We hope we can cross paths at some point. It's not hopefully the end, but anything you want to say now to the fans that have seen you on Cherries Red Army or Twitter and read all your pieces that you've covered for Bournemouth?
I just want to say, I just want to say a huge thank you because I got the job last year in June, and I never imagined to have this support. So people come up to you at away games, at home games. I remember a Stoke away, this elderly couple came up to me and they just said they read my pieces every night, and that was something that just hit home with me. And just everyone, I've given everything to this job. I've wanted to do it forever, and it was never a job really. It was something that I loved. I'd spend Saturdays, Sundays, even days when I wasn't supposed to be working, talking, researching, writing about the job. And I wanted to change the way local reporting was seen. I wanted to show that it was, people can write new stories. You didn't have to regurgitate old information or clickbait headlines. I wanted to evolve local reporting, and I think there's so many good reporters locally. And I hope whoever takes a job will give it the same passion and commitment and just enjoy it and appreciate the fan base, because I've absolutely loved it, and I will be working in the Premier League next season. So I really hope that when I come to Dean Court, I can meet up with some of you guys, and yeah, I'll be supporting Bournemouth throughout the season. And I wish you all the best of luck. I just want to say, massive thank you.
100%. Big boots to fill, 100%. I'm sure I speak for everyone, Jacob. You've been a breath of fresh air. It's been great to have you on the channel. I've enjoyed everything you've done for Bournemouth, but we do wish you all the best. Watch this space, I suppose you say, Jacob?
I think so. I think people can hazard a guess of what my next step is, but it was. I wouldn't have left this job unless it was for something that I always wanted to do and an ultimate goal of mine. So it was a difficult decision, but I really look forward to the future, and I think Bournemouth fans should too.
Now, I'm sure Jacob will check out the comments on this video when it's released. So if you want to say anything towards Jacob, how much you've enjoyed his content over the season for Bournemouth, put your thoughts in the comments. We'll like them, we'll love them, and Jacob, I'm sure, will read them. We hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe to Cherries Red Army and hit the like button. Jacob, all the best. Make sure you have a bit of a break, because I'm sure you'll be very busy very, very soon. And one final message, Jacob. Once a cherry, always a cherry. Don't ever forget that.
Exactly. Up the cherries.
Up the cherries. We'll see you on the next video.
Thank you.